Tonight, we will explore Buddhist teachings about letting go and learning to trust. Not trust in something abstract, but trust in the way life naturally unfolds when we stop forcing it. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. The masters who discovered these secrets were paying attention to small, true things that reveal how life works. They were watching water flow around stones. They were noticing how bamboo bends in the wind. What they discovered was that most of our struggle comes not from life itself, but from our relationship to it. From trying to control what can't be controlled. From holding on when it's time to release. From pushing when we could flow. These aren't just ideas to think about. They're truths you can feel in your body when you stop resisting. And as you see these patterns clearly, something shifts. The tight grip loosens. The breath deepens. Peace arrives, not because you achieved it, but because you stopped pushing it away. So get comfortable. Let your body settle. Close your eyes if that feels right. There's nothing to do but listen. Let's begin our journey together. There's a concept in Zen Buddhism called Wu Wei. In Chinese, it means effortless action. Not no action, but action without force, without strain, without that feeling of pushing against something that won't budge. Wu Wei is what you see when you watch water move down a hillside. The water doesn't force its way through rocks. It doesn't insist on a straight path. It finds the openings and flows through them. And over time, patient and persistent, that soft water shapes even the hardest stone. This is one of the deepest teachings in Zen. There's a way to engage with life that doesn't exhaust you. A way to move through difficulty that doesn't require you to harden yourself against it. Most of us learn the opposite. We learn that if something isn't working, try harder. Push more. Force it. And when that doesn't work, we blame ourselves for not being strong enough. But Zen asks a different question. What if the problem isn't your lack of force? What if the problem is the forcing itself? Think about the last time you tried to force something. A relationship. A plan. Your own mind to be different. Remember how that felt in your body. Tension in your shoulders. Tightness in your jaw. Exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix. That's what force costs. It depletes you. And often it doesn't even work. Now, think about a time when things flowed. When you were doing something and it felt easy even if it was challenging. You were engaged but not straining. Present but not anxious. That's Wu Wei. That's the natural way. The old Zen masters had a phrase for this. They said you should be like a wooden puppet on strings. Not because you're passive or lifeless, but because you respond to each moment naturally, without overthinking, without forcing. Let me share a story about this. There was once an archer, a master of his craft. People came from distant provinces to watch him shoot. His arrows never missed. They flew straight and true, finding their target with perfect consistency. One day, a young student approached him. The student was talented, but struggled. He practiced every day. His arms grew tired from the effort of pulling the bowstring. But his arrows wobbled in flight. They landed wide of the mark. He watched the master shoot. The master's stance was relaxed. His breathing was steady. When he drew the bow, there was no visible strain. When he released, the movement was so smooth it seemed the arrow released itself. The student bowed low. "Master," he said, "I practice constantly. I put all my strength into every shot. But I cannot achieve what you achieve. What am I doing wrong?" The master smiled. He handed the student his bow. "Shoot for me," he said. The student took his stance. He gripped the bow tightly. He pulled the string back with all his might, his whole body tensing with effort. He aimed carefully, holding his breath. Then he released. The arrow flew but curved left, missing the target. The master nodded. "Again," he said. "But this time, don't try so hard." The student looked confused. "But master, if I don't try hard, how will I improve?" The master walked behind him. He placed one hand gently on the student's shoulder. "Close your eyes," he said. "Feel the bow in your hands. Feel your feet on the ground. Breathe naturally. Don't think about the target. Don't think about success or failure. Just feel the bow. Feel your body. Feel the breath moving in and out." The student closed his eyes. His breathing slowed. His grip on the bow softened slightly. "Now," the master said quietly, "draw the bow. But don't force it. Let your body draw it. Let your breath guide the movement." The student drew. His shoulders dropped. The tension left his face. "Hold it there," the master said. "Feel how the bow wants to release. Don't make it happen. Let it happen. The bow knows when it's ready." The student stood there, eyes closed, breathing steady. And then, without deciding to, without thinking about it, he felt his fingers open. The string slipped free. The arrow flew. When he opened his eyes, the arrow was in the center of the target. "How?" the student asked. "You stopped forcing," the master said. "For the first time, you worked with the bow instead of against it. You let the shot happen instead of making it happen. That's the difference between force and flow." This story points to something essential in Zen Buddhism. Real skill, real mastery, doesn't come from muscling your way through. It comes from learning to align yourself with the natural movement of things. The archer wasn't being passive. He was fully engaged. But his engagement was relaxed, responsive, natural. He wasn't at war with the bow or the arrow or the target. He was dancing with them. This is what trust looks like in Zen. Not blind faith that everything will work out, but a deep confidence that when you align yourself with the way things naturally move, you don't have to force outcomes. They arise on their own. Think about your own life right now. Where are you forcing? Where are you gripping so tight your knuckles are white? Where are you trying to muscle something into place that keeps resisting you? And what would it feel like to soften there? Not to give up, but to stop forcing. To work with instead of against. The Zen masters watched nature closely because nature demonstrates Wu Wei perfectly. Trees don't force themselves to grow. They respond to conditions. Water finds its level. Seasons change without effort. And when you watch these natural processes, you see something remarkable. The most powerful forces in nature are also the most patient. The gentlest. Water carves canyons. Wind shapes mountains. But neither rushes, neither forces. This patience isn't passive waiting. It's active trust. Trust that steady pressure applied in harmony with natural laws accomplishes what force never could. Let me tell you another story, this one about bamboo. In a mountain valley, two groves of trees grew side by side. On one side, oak trees with thick trunks and rigid branches. On the other side, bamboo with slender stalks and flexible stems. When summer came, both groves were green and strong. But then winter arrived. Heavy snow began to fall. It accumulated in thick layers on every branch, weighing everything down. The oak trees stood firm. Their branches were strong. They didn't bend. They held the weight of the snow, refusing to give. "This is what we're built for," they seemed to say. "We can bear this. We will not yield." But the bamboo bent. When snow collected on their stems, they bowed down low, nearly touching the ground. They looked defeated. They looked weak. The snow fell for days. More and more accumulated on the oaks. Their branches began to creak under the strain. The sound echoed through the valley. One by one, their strong, rigid branches split and fell, crashing to the frozen ground. But the bamboo kept bending. And as they bent, the snow slid off their stems. It couldn't accumulate. The bamboo would bow low, release the weight, and spring back up, ready for the next snowfall. When spring finally came, the oaks stood damaged. Their splintered branches would take years to regrow. Some trees had split entirely and would not survive. But the bamboo straightened up, green and whole, as if winter had never come. This is the teaching. Strength without flexibility is brittle. It breaks under pressure. But flexibility, the willingness to bend, to yield, to move with what comes, that's what endures. In Zen, this isn't weakness. This is wisdom. The bamboo trusts that bending is not breaking. It trusts that yielding to what is allows it to survive what would destroy something rigid. How many times have you stood rigid in your life? Refusing to bend because you thought bending meant losing. Holding firm when what was needed was to let go, to release, to trust that you could spring back. The teaching of Wu Wei asks us to notice the difference between effort and force. Effort is engaged, responsive, alive. Force is tense, resistant, at war with reality. When you're in Wu Wei, even difficult things have a quality of flow. You're working hard, but you're not suffering. You're challenged, but not overwhelmed. You're present with what is instead of fighting for what should be. And here's what the masters discovered. When you stop forcing, you often accomplish more, not less. Because you're not wasting energy fighting reality. You're using that energy to respond skillfully to what actually is. There's an old Zen story about a cook that shows this beautifully. A lord hired a new cook for his kitchen. The cook was an old man, thin and quiet. He didn't look impressive. The other kitchen workers wondered why the Lord had chosen him. On his first day, the cook was given a large cut of meat to prepare. The other cooks watched to see what he would do. They expected him to struggle. The meat was tough, filled with bones and gristle. But the cook simply smiled. He picked up his knife, an old blade worn smooth from years of use. And he began to cut. His movements were slow, deliberate, but effortless. The knife seemed to glide through the meat. It found the spaces between bones. It separated muscle from tendon without any sawing or forcing. The other cooks were amazed. In minutes, the old cook had completely broken down the meat. Perfect cuts lay arranged on the table. He had not struggled once. "How do you do that?" One young cook asked. "I use all my strength and still the knife sticks. I have to saw and force it through." The old cook cleaned his blade carefully. He spoke quietly. "When I was young," he said, "I did the same. I thought cooking was about dominating the meat, about forcing the knife through. I went through many knives. I wore them down to nothing. My arms ached every night. But then a master taught me something. He showed me that meat has a natural structure. Bones connect in certain ways. Muscles separate along certain lines. The knife doesn't need to force through. It needs to find the pathways that are already there. Now, when I cut, I don't think about cutting. I feel the meat. I let the knife show me where it wants to go. I follow the grain, the spaces, the natural separations. The knife does what knives do. The meat reveals its structure, and I simply guide the process. There is no resistance because I'm not working against the nature of things. I'm working with it. The young cook tried this. At first, it felt wrong to not use force. But slowly, he began to feel what the old cook meant. The spaces between. The natural pathways. The way things want to separate when you're not forcing them together. This teaching is everywhere in Zen Buddhism. True skill looks effortless because it's aligned with the way things naturally work. It's not imposing order from outside. It's revealing the order that's already present. And this applies to so much more than cooking or archery. It applies to how you live your life. When you're trying to control a situation, you're like the young cook, sawing and forcing, wearing yourself down, creating resistance where there doesn't need to be any. But when you learn to sense the natural movement of things, when you feel for the pathways that are already there, suddenly everything becomes easier. Not because the situation changed, but because your relationship to it changed. You're no longer at war with reality. You're dancing with it. In Zen, this is what trust means. Not trusting that things will go your way, but trusting that there is a way things naturally move, and when you align with that movement, you don't have to force outcomes. The river doesn't need to force itself to reach the ocean. It trusts gravity, trusts the shape of the land, and flows toward the lowest point. Effortlessly. Inevitably. You have that same option. You can force your way forward, exhausting yourself, fighting every obstacle. Or you can learn to sense the natural flow and move with it. This doesn't mean you don't take action. Wu Wei isn't passivity. The archer still shoots. The bamboo still stands. The cook still cuts. But they do it with the minimum necessary force. They do it in harmony with the nature of things. There's a phrase in Zen: sitting like a mountain, moving like water. When you're still, be completely still. Grounded. Solid. Unshakable. But when you move, move like water. Responsive. Adaptive. Flowing around obstacles instead of crashing into them. This is the path of least resistance, but not in a lazy way. In a wise way. Why waste energy fighting when you could use that same energy to flow? Let us explore a tale about a ferryman. There was once a man who operated a ferry across a wide river. Every day, people would come to cross. Some were patient. Others were anxious, pacing the shore, demanding he hurry. The ferryman never rushed. He moved with steady, unhurried movements. He checked the boat. He felt the current. He watched the sky. And only when everything was ready would he push off from shore. One day a merchant arrived, frantic and agitated. "I must cross immediately," he said. "I have business on the other side. I'm already late. Please hurry." The ferryman looked at the water. He looked at the sky. "The current is strong today," he said. "We'll cross when it's safe." "I don't care about safe," the merchant said. "I care about fast. I'll pay you double, triple, just go now." The ferryman shook his head calmly. Money doesn't change the current. The merchant fumed, but he had no choice. He waited. An hour passed. The ferryman sat peacefully, watching the water. Finally, the ferryman stood. "Now," he said simply. They crossed. The ferryman's strokes were even, rhythmic. He didn't fight the current. He used it. When it pushed left, he adjusted right. When it pulled down, he angled across. The boat moved steadily, arriving at the far shore safely. "Why did we wait?" the merchant demanded. "We made it across fine." "Because an hour ago, the current would have pushed us a mile downstream," the ferryman said. "We would have had to walk back. Or I would have had to fight the water the whole way, exhausting myself and endangering us both. By waiting for the right time, the crossing was easy." The merchant was quiet. He had spent that hour in anxiety, in resistance, in frustration. The ferryman had spent it in peace, simply observing, waiting for the natural moment to act. "You could teach me to row," the merchant said slowly, "but you can't teach me to wait, can you?" The ferryman smiled. "I can't teach you to wait, but the river can, if you let it." This is another layer of Wu Wei. It's not just about how you act, but when. Natural timing is as important as natural movement. Sometimes the wise action is to wait, to observe, to let conditions ripen before you engage. In our modern world, we've lost touch with this. We think every moment demands action. Every problem requires immediate solution. Every discomfort must be fixed right now. But Zen teaches differently. It teaches that there's a rhythm to things, a natural timing that can't be rushed. Seeds germinate on their own schedule. Fruit ripens when it's ready. Forcing these processes doesn't speed them up. It damages them. And the same is true in your life. Some things need time. Some situations need space to resolve themselves. Some problems dissolve on their own when you stop prodding them. The ferryman understood this. He didn't fight the river. He didn't waste energy rowing against the current during the wrong hour. He waited. He watched. And when the moment was right, he acted with minimal effort and maximum effectiveness. This is the art of timing in Zen Buddhism. Learning to feel when to engage and when to wait. When to speak and when to be silent. When to push forward and when to let things settle. And how do you learn this? The same way you learn Wu Wei, by paying attention, by noticing what happens when you force timing versus when you respect natural rhythms. Watch a master potter at the wheel. They don't force the clay into shape. They feel when it's ready to rise, when it needs to rest, when it's time to shape the rim. If they rush, the pot collapses. If they wait too long, the clay becomes too dry. There's a window, a natural moment when the clay wants to become a pot, and the master feels for that moment. You have that same capacity. You can learn to feel the natural timing of situations, not through thinking, but through attention, through being present enough to sense when something is ready and when it needs more time. This is trust in action. Trust that you don't have to force every door open. Trust that some doors will open on their own when the time is right. Trust that your job isn't to control timing, but to recognize it. The teaching of Wu Wei invites you to notice where you're forcing right now. In your body, in your relationships, in your work, in your expectations of how life should be. And it invites you to experiment with a different approach. What if you stopped forcing? What if you softened your grip? What if you looked for the natural movement instead of imposing your own? What if you waited for the right timing instead of demanding immediate results? You might be surprised. Often, what you couldn't accomplish through force suddenly becomes possible through flow. Not because you got stronger, but because you stopped working against yourself. This is one of the great gifts of Zen Buddhism. It shows you that there's another way, a way that doesn't deplete you, a way that actually works better than forcing ever did. And it all starts with trust. Trust that life has its own intelligence. Trust that water finds its way without your intervention. Trust that bamboo knows how to bend. Trust that arrows fly straight when you stop gripping so tight. Trust that the river has its own rhythm and the ferryman knows when to cross. This trust isn't something you manufacture. It's something you discover. You discover it by experimenting, by trying a lighter touch and noticing what happens, by softening and seeing that you don't collapse, by flowing and finding that you arrive where you needed to be, by waiting and watching situations resolve themselves in ways you couldn't have orchestrated. The masters weren't asking you to believe them. They were inviting you to try it yourself, to test these teachings against your own experience. And what you'll find, if you do, is that Wu Wei isn't just a nice idea. It's a practical approach to living that makes everything easier. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop making it harder than it needs to be. Your body already knows this. Watch how you breathe when you're relaxed. You're not forcing air in and out. You're allowing it. The breath happens naturally when you don't interfere. That's Wu Wei at its most basic. And everything else works the same way. So, as we continue, keep this teaching close. When you notice yourself forcing, remember the archer who stopped trying so hard. Remember the bamboo that survived by bending. Remember the cook who found the spaces where the knife naturally wants to go. Remember the ferryman who waited for the current to change. And see if you can bring that same quality to your own life. A little less force, a little more flow, a little more trust in the natural way things want to unfold, a little more patience with natural timing. This is the beginning of letting go in Zen Buddhism. Not giving up, but giving over. Not to fate or chance, but to the natural intelligence that runs through everything. The same intelligence that makes flowers bloom and rivers flow and seasons change. It's been there all along. You just have to stop forcing long enough to feel it. Stop pushing long enough to sense the current. Stop gripping long enough to let your hands open and receive what's already trying to come to you. Wu Wei. Effortless action. Natural trust. The way of water and bamboo and arrows that fly true and ferrymen who know when to cross. This is how Zen invites you to live. Not harder. Easier. Not with more force. With more flow. Not against the current. With it. And when you begin to live this way, even a little bit, something remarkable happens. Life doesn't become perfect, but it becomes lighter, more spacious, more possible, because you're finally working with reality instead of against it. And reality, it turns out, is much more cooperative than you thought. When you stop forcing it to be different than it is. There's something we all do without realizing it. We hold on. We grip. We carry things long after we need to. Not physical things, though sometimes those too. But mostly the invisible weight. The old conversations that play on repeat in your mind. The mistakes you made years ago. The ways you wish things had gone differently. The hurt someone caused you. The version of yourself you think you should be by now. All of this you carry. And it's exhausting. In Zen Buddhism, there's a teaching about this. The suffering you experience doesn't come from life itself. It comes from grasping. From holding on to what wants to move. From trying to keep what's already changing. From refusing to let go. The word for this is upadana. It means clinging. And the Buddha was very clear about this. Clinging is what turns natural pain into prolonged suffering. Life brings pain. That's inevitable. Bodies age. People leave. Plans don't work out. But suffering, that deep exhaustion that lives in your bones, that comes from your relationship to the pain, from holding it tight, from replaying it, from building a home inside it and refusing to move out. Think about the last argument you had. Maybe it was weeks ago, maybe months, maybe years, but you still carry it, don't you? You still review what was said. You still compose better responses in your mind. You still feel that tightness in your chest when you think about it. The argument is over. It's done. It exists only in memory now. But you're still holding it, still carrying it, and it weighs you down every single day. This is what the Zen masters want you to see. The weight isn't the thing itself. The weight is your refusal to put it down. Let me share a story about this. Two monks were traveling together, walking from one monastery to another. They had both taken vows of simplicity. They owned nothing but their robes. They spoke little. They practiced discipline in all things. As they walked, they came to a river. The water was high from recent rains. It rushed past, muddy and swift. There was no bridge, only a shallow crossing that would require wading through. Standing at the river's edge was a woman in fine silk robes. She looked distressed. She needed to cross, but couldn't manage it alone. The current was too strong. The water would ruin her expensive clothes. The first monk saw her immediately. Without a word, he walked over to her, picked her up gently, and carried her across the river. The water came up to his knees. His robe got wet. But he set her down safely on the other side. She thanked him with genuine gratitude. He bowed slightly and continued walking with his companion. The second monk said nothing, but his face was tight. His jaw was clenched. His steps became heavy. They walked for an hour in silence, then 2 hours. The sun climbed higher. The road stretched out before them, dusty and quiet. The second monk's agitation grew more obvious. His shoulders were rigid. His breathing was shallow. He kept glancing at his companion, then looking away. Finally, he couldn't contain it anymore. "How could you do that?" He burst out. "You know our vows. We're not supposed to touch women. We're supposed to maintain distance, to avoid attachment, to focus on our practice. You picked her up. You carried her. You broke your vows right in front of me." The first monk stopped walking. He turned to look at his companion. His expression was calm. His eyes were gentle. "Brother," he said quietly, "I put her down at the river 3 hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" The second monk stood there, the words landing like stones. He realized what he'd been doing. For 3 hours, he'd been carrying that woman in his mind, replaying the moment, building a case against his companion, working himself into righteous anger. The first monk had helped someone who needed help. Then he let it go. He moved on. He was present with the road, with the sky, with each step. But the second monk had been carrying her ever since. Not in his arms, but in his thoughts. And that weight was so much heavier than any physical burden. This story cuts right to the heart of what Zen Buddhism teaches about letting go. The first monk engaged with reality as it presented itself. A person needed help. He helped, and then he released it completely. No story about what it meant. No attachment to having done a good deed. No clinging to the action or its righteousness. The second monk never touched the woman, but he was completely entangled with her. He carried her in his judgment, in his rigid ideas about rules, in his mental story about transgression and purity. Which monk was more free? Which one was actually living his vows of non-attachment? How many things are you still carrying that happened hours or days or years ago? How many conversations are you replaying? How many versions of events are you reviewing, wishing you'd said something different, done something better? The event is over. It exists only in memory now. But you're choosing, moment by moment, to keep picking it up and carrying it. And the weight of that is breaking you. Zen teaches that this is optional. You can put it down, not because the thing didn't matter, not because you're dismissing what happened, but because carrying it doesn't change it. Holding it tight doesn't make it better. It only exhausts you. There's another teaching in Zen Buddhism about this. It's about a farmer and his horse. In a small village, there lived a farmer who owned a beautiful horse. His neighbors admired this horse. It was strong, healthy, valuable. The farmer was fortunate to have such an animal. One day, the horse broke through the fence and ran away into the hills. The neighbors came to the farmer's house, shaking their heads. "What terrible luck," they said. "Your horse is gone." "This is a disaster." The farmer shrugged. "Maybe," he said. A week later, the horse returned, and it brought with it 3 wild horses it had befriended in the hills. Now the farmer had 4 horses instead of 1. The neighbors rushed over, excited and congratulating. "What wonderful luck," they said. "You're so fortunate. This is marvelous." The farmer shrugged. "Maybe," he said. The next day, the farmer's son was training one of the wild horses. He was thrown off and broke his leg badly. He would be unable to work for months. The family would struggle without his labor. The neighbors came again, this time with sympathy and concern. "What terrible luck," they said. "Your son is injured." "This is awful." The farmer shrugged. "Maybe," he said. A week after that, military officers came to the village. They were conscripting all the young men to fight in a distant war. Many would not return. But when they came to the farmer's house and saw his son with a broken leg, they left him behind. He was unfit for service. The neighbors marveled at the farmer's fortune. "What incredible luck," they said. "Your son has been spared. You're so blessed." The farmer looked at them calmly. "Maybe," he said. This story isn't about being indifferent to what happens. The farmer cared about his horse, about his son, about his life. But he understood something the neighbors didn't. He understood that he couldn't see the full pattern. What looked like disaster might be protection. What looked like fortune might bring difficulty. The story wasn't finished. The meaning wasn't fixed. So he didn't cling to any interpretation. He didn't hold tight to "this is good" or "this is bad." He stayed present with what was, without grasping at what it meant. This is another layer of letting go in Zen. Not just releasing the past, but releasing your grip on meaning itself. On needing to know if something is good or bad, right or wrong, fortune or disaster. The neighbors exhausted themselves riding an emotional roller coaster. Celebrating, then grieving, then celebrating again. Their happiness and suffering came not from the events themselves, but from their rigid interpretations of what those events meant. The farmer remained steady. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe this is good. Maybe it's bad. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's neither. Maybe I can't know yet. Maybe I don't need to know." That maybe isn't uncertainty or confusion. It's wisdom. It's the recognition that life is more complex than your judgments of it. And when you stop clinging to those judgments, you stop creating unnecessary suffering. Right now, think about something in your life that you've labeled as bad, as wrong, as the thing that ruined everything. Can you hold that a little more lightly? Can you add a maybe to it? Maybe it's not what you think it is. Maybe the story isn't over. Maybe good things are growing from it that you can't see yet. Maybe your tight grip on this interpretation is causing more pain than the event itself. This is what Zen Buddhism invites you to practice. A lighter touch with meaning. A willingness to not know. A trust that you don't have to figure everything out and label it and file it away before you can move forward. Let me share one more story. This one is shorter, but it goes deep. A student came to his teacher carrying a large stone. He was panting from the effort. Sweat dripped down his face. "Teacher," he said, "I'm trying to let go of my attachments, but they're so heavy. How long must I carry this burden?" The teacher looked at him calmly. Then he asked a simple question. Who told you to pick it up in the first place? The student stood there, stunned. The stone suddenly felt impossibly heavy in his arms. He realized he could put it down any time. He'd been choosing to hold it, and he could choose to release it. He set the stone on the ground. His arms were shaking. His shoulders ached, but the weight was gone. The burden you carry, the teacher said gently, is not forced upon you. You pick it up, you hold it, and you can put it down whenever you're ready. This teaching is so simple, it's easy to miss. You're not a victim of the weight you carry. You're the one carrying it, which means you have the power to put it down. But here's what makes this difficult. Somewhere along the way, you started to believe that holding on is loyalty, that replaying painful memories is processing them, that carrying resentment is strength, that refusing to let go means you care. But Zen shows you differently. Holding on isn't strength. It's suffering. And putting down what doesn't serve you isn't abandonment. It's wisdom. Your body knows this already. Notice right now where you're holding tension. Your shoulders, your jaw, your stomach. That tension is your body's way of showing you where you're clinging, where you're carrying weight that isn't yours to carry. And when you set that weight down, even for a moment, even just to breathe one deep breath and soften your grip, your body responds immediately. The shoulders drop, the jaw unclenches, the breath deepens. This is the feedback loop Zen teaches you to pay attention to. Your body tells you when you're grasping, and it tells you when you've released. So what are you carrying right now that you could put down? Maybe it's anger at someone who hurt you years ago. They're not thinking about you. They've moved on. But you're still having arguments with them in your mind, carrying them with you everywhere you go. Maybe it's shame about something you did, something you regret. You've apologized. You've learned from it, but you won't forgive yourself. You carry that shame like a badge, showing it to yourself over and over. Maybe it's grief that's turned into a kind of prison. You lost something precious, and in honoring it, you've made a home inside the loss. You're afraid that letting go of the grief means letting go of what you loved. Or maybe it's simpler than all that. Maybe you're just carrying the expectation that you should be different than you are. Further along, more healed, less broken. And that constant comparison exhausts you more than any external circumstance ever could. All of this is weight. All of this is grasping. And all of it is optional. The teaching isn't that you should never feel anger or shame or grief. Those are natural human responses to life. They move through you if you let them. But when you cling to them, when you make them into an identity, when you replay them endlessly, they stop moving. They become weight. In Zen, they talk about clouds passing through the sky. The sky doesn't hold on to clouds. It doesn't identify with them. It doesn't say, "I am the cloudy sky," and insist on staying overcast forever. Clouds come. Clouds go. The sky remains open, spacious, allowing. You are the sky. Your experiences are the clouds. They pass through. They're real while they're here. But they're not you. And you don't have to hold them in place. This is the practice. Noticing when you're gripping. Feeling the weight of what you're carrying. And gently, with compassion for yourself, seeing if you can soften your hold. You don't have to drop everything at once. You don't have to be perfect at this. You just have to notice. Oh, I'm replaying that conversation again. Oh, I'm carrying that old hurt. Oh, I'm holding tension in my shoulders from something that happened days ago. And then, just for this one breath, you can set it down. Feel what it's like to not carry it for a moment. Notice how your body responds. Notice the space that opens up. You'll probably pick it back up again. The mind is habitual. It returns to familiar patterns. That's okay. That's normal. The practice isn't to never pick things up. It's to notice when you have, and to practice putting them down again and again. This is what Zen Buddhism means by letting go. Not a one-time event. Not a final achievement. But a practice. A gentle, repeated returning to openness. A willingness to set down the weight whenever you remember that you're carrying it. There's a difference between remembering something and carrying it. Between honoring what happened and imprisoning yourself in it. Between learning from the past and living there. The Zen masters understood this distinction deeply. They taught that memory itself isn't the problem. Pain itself isn't the problem. The problem is when you wrap your identity around these things. When you build walls out of old hurts and move in permanently. Let me tell you about a master and his student who explored this very thing. A young monk had been studying for several years. He was dedicated, sincere in his practice. But he was haunted by something from his past. Before he became a monk, he had hurt someone he loved. The guilt lived in him like a stone. Every day during meditation, his mind would return to that moment. He would see the person's face, hear the words, feel the shame wash over him fresh, as if it had just happened. He went to his teacher. "Master," he said, "I carry this guilt everywhere. I've apologized. The person forgave me, but I can't forgive myself. How do I let it go?" The teacher was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Come with me." They walked to a small pond behind the temple. The water was still, reflecting the sky perfectly. The teacher picked up a stone from the path. He held it up. "This stone," he said, "throw it into the pond." The student threw the stone. It splashed into the center of the pond. Ripples spread out in perfect circles, disturbing the reflection. But gradually the ripples faded. The water settled. The reflection returned. The pond was still again. "Where is the stone now?" the teacher asked. "At the bottom of the pond," the student said. "Can you see it?" "No." "Is it still there?" "Yes, but it's settled. It's at rest." The teacher nodded. "Your guilt is like that stone. You threw it in. It created ripples. Those ripples were real. They disturbed the water, but the water doesn't hold on to the ripples. It lets them fade. It returns to stillness. The stone settles to the bottom. It becomes part of the pond bed, part of the foundation. But the surface is clear again. You're trying to keep the ripples alive, the teacher continued. You're disturbing the water over and over, remembering the splash, recreating the disturbance. But the event is done. The stone has settled. Your job now is to let the water be still. The student stood there, watching the pond. The surface was perfectly calm now. You couldn't tell a stone had been thrown, but the stone was still there, at the bottom, part of the pond's depth. The past doesn't disappear, the teacher said. It becomes part of your depth, but it doesn't have to disturb your surface. You can learn from it, grow from it, let it shape who you are. But you don't have to carry it in your hands every moment of every day. This teaching goes deeper than simple forgetting. Zen Buddhism doesn't ask you to pretend the past didn't happen. It asks you to integrate it without being consumed by it. The stone in the pond is still there. The young monk's action still happened. But there's a difference between the stone resting at the bottom and constantly throwing it in again. Between letting the water settle and deliberately creating ripples day after day. When you replay painful memories, you're throwing the stone in again. When you rehearse old arguments, you're creating new ripples from an old event. When you refuse to let guilt rest, you're disturbing water that wants to be still. And this exhausts you. Not the original event, but the constant reenactment of it. Think about water again. This is what Zen Buddhism does. It keeps returning you to nature, to simple, observable truths about how things work. Water doesn't hold on to anything. It receives everything. A leaf falls in. The water holds it for a moment, then lets it float away or sink. Rain falls in. The water accepts it, integrates it, and continues being water. You can be like that. You can receive what happens, let it move through you or settle in you, and then return to clarity. The surface can be still even though the depths contain everything you've experienced. But most of us do the opposite. We dam ourselves up. We hold everything in. We create stagnant pools where things can't move, can't settle, can't integrate. And then we wonder why we feel so heavy, so stuck. The teaching here is about flow again. Not the flow of wu-wei from earlier, but the flow of allowing experiences to move through you rather than building walls to hold them in place. When you grip an experience tightly, trying to keep it exactly as it is, you're stopping the natural flow. And anything that stops flowing starts to stagnate. Pain that flows through you is acute but temporary. Pain that you dam up becomes chronic suffering. This is why the Zen masters always point you back to now. Not because the past doesn't exist, but because now is the only moment you can actually choose how you relate to the past. Right now, in this moment, you're either carrying or not carrying, gripping or releasing, creating ripples or allowing stillness. And you get to choose. Not once, but moment by moment. Let me share something else about this weight we carry. Sometimes we don't even realize we're carrying it. It's become so familiar, it feels like part of who we are. There's a story about this too. A traveler was walking along a road, bent under the weight of a large pack on his back. A farmer working in a nearby field watched him struggle by. The traveler's steps were slow and labored. He was clearly exhausted. The next day, the farmer saw the same traveler coming back the other way. Still bent. Still struggling under the same large pack. The farmer called out to him, "Friend, you seem to be carrying something heavy. What's in your pack?" The traveler stopped, breathing hard. He looked confused. "Pack?" he said. "What pack?" "The one on your back," the farmer said, pointing. The traveler reached back and felt the pack. His eyes widened. He'd been carrying it for so long, he'd forgotten it was there. It had just become part of how he moved through the world. He took it off and opened it. Inside were stones. Just stones. No food. No supplies. No tools. Just heavy stones he'd been carrying without even knowing why. Why would I carry this? He asked, more to himself than to the farmer. I don't know, the farmer said gently. But now that you know it's there, you can put it down. This is what awareness does in Zen Buddhism. It shows you what you're carrying, not to shame you, not to blame you, but to give you the choice to put it down. You might be carrying beliefs about yourself that aren't true, stories about what you deserve, judgments from other people that you internalized years ago, expectations that were never yours to begin with, old identities that no longer fit, pain that's long since healed, but you keep probing the wound to see if it still hurts. And you carry all of this unconsciously. It's just become your normal. You don't remember a time without it. You've forgotten it's there. But when you start to practice Zen, when you start to pay attention, you begin to notice. Oh, I'm doing it again. I'm carrying something. And you can ask yourself, like the traveler with his pack, why am I carrying this? What purpose does it serve? Can I put it down? Often, you'll find there's no good reason. You're just carrying it because you always have. Because you forgot it was there. Because it became familiar. And sometimes the relief of putting it down is so immediate, you wonder how you carried it for so long. Like taking off a heavy backpack after a long hike. Your body straightens. Your breath deepens. You realize how much energy you were using just to hold that weight. This is the gift of awareness in Zen. It doesn't necessarily make you stronger so you can carry more. It shows you what you're carrying so you can choose to put it down. The monks at the river. The farmer and his horse. The student and his stone. The stone in the pond. The traveler with his pack of rocks. These aren't just stories. They're mirrors. They're showing you what you do. And they're showing you that there's another way. You can engage with life fully, like the first monk helping the woman across the river, and then release it. You can hold your interpretations lightly, like the farmer saying, maybe. You can put down the burden you've been carrying, like the student with his stone. You can let the water settle, like the guilt that becomes depth instead of disturbance. You can notice what you're carrying and choose to set it down, like the traveler with his pack. This is the gift of Zen Buddhism. It shows you that the weight you're carrying isn't fixed. It's not permanent. It's not inevitable. You picked it up. And moment by moment, breath by breath, you can choose to put it down. Not because the past doesn't matter. Not because your pain wasn't real. But because carrying it doesn't change it. And you deserve to walk through life without that weight pressing down on you. The practice is simple, though not always easy. Notice what you're carrying. Feel the weight of it. Ask yourself if you need to keep holding it. And then, gently, see if you can soften your grip. Just a little. Just for now. You don't have to make a big decision. You don't have to commit to never picking it up again. You just have to practice putting it down in this moment, and then in the next moment, and then in the one after that. Over time, something shifts. Not because you've mastered letting go, but because you've practiced it enough that it becomes more natural. The grip loosens. The weight feels less permanent. You remember more quickly that you have a choice. And you start to notice how much energy you have when you're not using it all to hold on to what's already gone. How much space opens up in your mind. How much lighter your body feels. So right now, even if just for this moment, can you soften? Can you feel where you're gripping and let your hands open just a little? Can you notice what you're carrying and set it down just for this one breath? You might be surprised by how light you feel. How much space opens up. How possible everything suddenly seems when you're not weighed down by everything you've been carrying. This is the beginning. This moment right here. This willingness to notice what you're carrying and to choose, just for now, to put it down. The path of letting go in Zen Buddhism starts with recognizing that you're holding on. And it continues with the gentle, repeated practice of release. Not once, not perfectly, but over and over, with kindness toward yourself, learning that you don't have to carry everything. You never did. And the beautiful thing is, you can start right now. This breath, this moment, this small softening of the grip, this tiny willingness to set something down. That's all it takes. Just this. Just now. Just a gentle letting go of what you've been holding so tight. The weight wasn't yours to carry. And the freedom to put it down has always been yours to claim. There's a kind of peace that comes from 3 simple words. I don't know. Not the frustrated kind of not knowing, where you feel like you should know and you're failing because you don't. But the honest, open kind of not knowing. The kind that doesn't need to have all the answers right now. The kind that can rest in uncertainty without panic. This is one of the most radical teachings in Zen Buddhism. In a world that demands certainty, that measures intelligence by how much you know, that treats uncertainty as weakness, Zen says something different. Zen says not knowing is wisdom. There's a concept for this. It's called Shoshin. In Japanese, it means beginner's mind. It's the ability to approach each moment fresh, open, curious, without the weight of what you think you already know. A beginner's mind doesn't pretend ignorance. It's not false modesty. It's a recognition that every moment is actually new. That your fixed ideas about how things are can blind you to how things actually are right now. The Zen masters noticed something. The more convinced you are that you understand something, the less able you are to see it clearly. Your understanding becomes a lens that filters everything. You see what you expect to see. You miss what doesn't fit your existing knowledge. But when you approach something with genuine not knowing, with real openness, you can see it as it is. Fresh. Unfiltered. True. Think about the last time you were completely sure about something. So certain you knew exactly how it was, what it meant, what would happen. And then reality surprised you. Showed you something you hadn't seen. Revealed a perspective you hadn't considered. That surprise is life telling you that your knowing was incomplete. Not wrong necessarily. Just not the whole picture. And your certainty had closed you off from seeing more. This is what Zen Buddhism invites you to question. Not your knowledge itself, but your attachment to it. Your need to be certain. Your grip on being right. Let me tell you a story about this. There was a university professor, a brilliant man who had studied philosophy for decades. He had written books. He had taught hundreds of students. He was known throughout the country for his intellect and learning. One day, he heard about a Zen master who lived in a remote monastery. The professor was curious. He wanted to understand this Zen Buddhism that people spoke about with such reverence. So he traveled to the monastery and requested an audience with the master. The master received him graciously. They sat together in a simple room, a low table between them, afternoon light coming through paper screens. The master prepared tea. His movements were slow, deliberate, peaceful. He heated the water. He measured the tea leaves. He warmed the pot. Every gesture was complete in itself. The professor, meanwhile, began to talk. He talked about his studies, about what he understood of Buddhism from his reading, about the philosophical frameworks he'd developed, about the lectures he'd given on Eastern thought. The master listened. He didn't interrupt. He simply continued preparing the tea. When the tea was ready, the master began to pour. He filled the professor's cup, but he didn't stop pouring when the cup was full. The tea rose to the brim, spilled over the edge, ran across the table, dripped onto the floor. The professor watched in alarm. "Stop," he finally said. "The cup is full. No more will go in." The master set down the pot. He looked at the professor with gentle eyes. "Yes," he said. "You are like this cup. You come here full of your own ideas, your own knowledge, your own understanding. There is no room for anything new. How can I show you Zen when your cup is already full?" The professor sat there, tea dripping from the table onto his robes. He understood. He'd come seeking knowledge, but he'd already decided what that knowledge would look like. He had categories, frameworks, interpretations ready. He was trying to pour Zen into his existing understanding rather than letting Zen show him something new. His certainty had closed him off. His cup was too full to receive. The master smiled kindly. "If you want to learn," he said, "first empty your cup." This story touches something essential in Zen Buddhism. The obstacle to learning isn't lack of knowledge. It's the belief that you already know. When your cup is full, nothing new can enter. When your mind is full of certainty, full of fixed ideas about how things are and what things mean, there's no space for fresh understanding, for new perspectives, for reality to show you something unexpected. The professor had to let go of what he thought he knew before he could learn anything real. He had to empty his cup, create space, open his mind. This is what beginner's mind means. Not pretending you don't know things, but holding what you know lightly enough that you can still see clearly, still be surprised, still learn. Think about children. They don't know much yet, but they see everything with fresh eyes. A puddle is an entire world. A box is a spaceship. They're not filtering reality through layers of, "I already know what this is." They're meeting each thing directly with curiosity and wonder. You had that once. Before you learned to be certain, before you decided you understood how things work, before your cup got full, and you can have it again, not by forgetting what you've learned, but by holding it more lightly, by staying open to the possibility that reality is bigger than your understanding of it. The Zen masters practiced this constantly. Even after decades of meditation, they approached each moment as if for the first time. They didn't rest on what they'd realized yesterday. They met today fresh. This takes a kind of courage, because not knowing feels vulnerable in a world that rewards certainty. When someone asks you a question and you say, "I don't know," it can feel like admitting weakness, like failing some test. But Zen sees it differently. Saying, "I don't know," when you truly don't know is honest. It's real. It's the beginning of genuine understanding rather than the performance of false certainty. And here's what's interesting. The anxiety you feel about not knowing isn't caused by the not knowing itself. It's caused by your belief that you should know, that you must know, that not knowing is dangerous or shameful. But what if it's not? What if not knowing is just the honest state you're in before understanding arises? What if it's okay to rest there without panic? Let me share another story. This one goes even deeper into this teaching. In a village not far from a monastery, there lived a Zen master named Hakuin. He was respected throughout the region. People came from far away to study with him. His reputation for wisdom was well known. In the same village lived a young woman from a wealthy family. She became pregnant. When her parents demanded to know who the father was, she was terrified of their anger. In her fear, she named Hakuin. The parents were outraged. They stormed to the master's home with fury and accusations. Their daughter was pregnant, and she claimed Hakuin was responsible. What did he have to say about this scandal? Hakuin listened to their accusations. He was calm. His face showed no distress. When they finished, he said simply, "Is that so?" That was all. "Is that so?" The parents took this as admission of guilt. They spread the news throughout the village. The master's reputation was destroyed overnight. Students left. People who had revered him now whispered about him with contempt. His honor was in ruins. When the baby was born, the parents brought the infant to Hakuin. "This is your child," they said coldly. "Your responsibility." Hakuin took the baby without protest. He held the small bundle gently. "Is that so?" he said. He began caring for the infant. He begged milk from neighbors, even those who turned away from him in disgust. He changed the baby's wrappings. He walked the temple grounds late at night when the child cried, singing soft songs. He asked nothing from anyone. He made no defense of himself. He simply cared for the baby as if it were the most natural thing in the world. A year passed. The young woman's guilt grew unbearable. She could no longer live with the lie. She confessed to her parents. The real father was a young man from a nearby village. She had named Hakuin out of fear, knowing her parents would believe anything bad about a monk. The parents were horrified by what they'd done. They rushed to Hakuin's home. They bowed low. They apologized profusely. They explained the mistake. They praised his character for enduring such injustice with grace. They reached for the baby to take it back to its rightful place. Hakuin handed over the child gently. He looked at them with the same calm he'd shown a year before. "Is that so?" he said. This story isn't about passivity. It's not about letting people mistreat you. It's about something much more profound. It's about not needing to control the narrative, not needing everyone to understand your side, not needing to be right or to be seen as right. Hakuin didn't know why this was happening. He didn't know how long it would last. He didn't know if his reputation would ever recover. But he also didn't torture himself demanding answers to these questions. Most of us in Hakuin's position would have spent that entire year in anguish, demanding justice, insisting on our innocence, furious at the injustice, obsessed with being vindicated, tormented by not knowing how long this would last or if it would ever be made right. All of that would have been suffering added to an already difficult situation. The baby still needed care regardless. The work still needed doing. But we would have been doing it while simultaneously fighting reality, resenting it, needing it to be different. Hakuin just cared for the baby. When people accused him, is that so? When people praised him, is that so? He didn't cling to either story. He didn't need to know what it all meant. He was simply present with what was. This is the freedom that comes from not knowing in Zen Buddhism. Not the not knowing of confusion, but the not knowing that doesn't need to nail everything down. That can live with mystery. That can rest in uncertainty. Think about your own life right now. How much of your suffering comes from not having answers? From not knowing how things will turn out? From uncertainty about the future, about other people's thoughts, about whether you're doing the right thing? And what if that's okay? What if you don't need those answers right now? What if you could rest in, is that so? And meet what's actually here rather than torturing yourself with what you can't know yet? The mind hates this. The mind wants certainty. It wants to figure everything out, nail it all down, know what everything means and where it's all going. The mind thinks this is safety. But Zen shows you something different. That clinging to certainty is what creates anxiety. That needing to know is what disturbs peace. That you can be with not knowing and be okay. There's another teaching story that goes to this directly. A monk approached his master with a question. He bowed respectfully and asked, "Master, what is Buddha?" This was a traditional question. The monk was asking about the fundamental nature of enlightenment, of truth, of reality itself. It was a profound spiritual inquiry. The master looked at him and said, 3 pounds of flax." The monk was confused. 3 pounds of flax? What kind of answer was that? What did it mean? How was this supposed to help him understand anything? But that was exactly the point. The monk wanted an answer he could understand, a concept he could grasp, some wisdom he could hold in his mind and feel certain about. He wanted to know. The master gave him something that couldn't be grasped that way, something that pointed beyond the mind's need for conceptual understanding. 3 pounds of flax isn't a concept about reality. It's just 3 pounds of flax. Direct. Immediate. Present. It's not about what it means. It's about meeting what is without, the filter of meaning-making. This is what Zen does again and again. It frustrates the mind's need to understand in the conventional way. Not to be cruel, but to show you that there's another way of knowing, a direct way, an immediate way, a way that doesn't require translating everything into concepts. You can know something without being able to explain it. You can understand something without being able to put it into words. You can be certain of something while remaining open to being wrong. This is the paradox of Zen wisdom. It's sure and unsure at the same time, confident and humble simultaneously, knowing and not knowing in the same breath. The masters called this don't know mind, and they considered it the most valuable state you could cultivate. Don't know mind isn't ignorance. It's not confusion. It's not the kind of not knowing that comes from lack of attention or understanding. It's the not knowing that comes after you've paid deep attention, after you've looked closely at reality and realized that reality is more mysterious, more complex, more alive than any concept you could form about it. It's the not knowing that sees through false certainty, that recognizes when you're pretending to understand something you don't. That's honest about the limits of what anyone can know. And paradoxically, this not knowing opens you to real understanding, because you're not filtering everything through fixed ideas. You're meeting reality fresh, and reality can teach you things your certainty never allowed. The professor with his full cup had to empty it before he could learn. Hakuin with his, "Is that so?" didn't cling to any story about what was happening. The monk asking about Buddha had to let go of his need for a graspable answer. All of them were being invited into don't know mind, into the freedom of not needing to have it all figured out. This is one of the most healing teachings in Zen Buddhism, because so much of your suffering comes from your relationship with uncertainty. You don't know if you're making the right decision. You don't know if things will work out. You don't know what someone else is thinking or feeling. You don't know if you're enough. You don't know what the future holds. And instead of being okay with not knowing, you create anxiety. You spin in your mind. You try to figure it all out. You demand answers that aren't available yet. You treat uncertainty as a threat. But what if uncertainty is just the honest condition of being alive? What if you don't need to know everything? What if you can take the next step even without seeing the whole staircase? This is what beginner's mind offers you. Permission to not know. Permission to be uncertain. Permission to say, "Is that so?" And let reality unfold without needing to control it with your understanding. It's not that understanding is bad. Understanding is wonderful when it arises naturally. But forcing understanding, demanding certainty, clinging to what you think you know, that creates suffering. Zen invites you to hold everything more lightly. Your beliefs, your knowledge, your certainty about how things are. Not because these things are worthless, but because when you hold them too tightly, you can't see clearly. Your cup is too full to receive anything new. Notice when your cup is full. When you're so certain about something that you've stopped really looking at it. When you've decided what something means before you've fully experienced it. When you're filtering everything through, "I already know this." There's often a small gap between your certainty and your response. In that gap lives a question. Do I really know? Or am I assuming? Consider what happens when you're honest about not knowing. Not as defeat, but as truth, as openness, as the beginning of real understanding. What would you see if you looked at familiar things with fresh eyes? Your home, your work, your relationships, even yourself, without all your accumulated ideas about how these things are? When life brings something unexpected, when plans change, when someone surprises you, notice what arises. There's often an immediate rush to create a story about what it means. But in the space before that story forms, there's something else. moment of pure not knowing, of openness to what is. Opinions and decisions still form, but they can be held lightly, open to new information, recognizing that understanding is always provisional, partial, incomplete. The Zen masters weren't trying to make you doubt everything. They were trying to free you from the prison of certainty, from the suffering that comes from clinging to fixed ideas about how things are or should be. Because reality is always more than your ideas about it. Life is always bigger than your understanding of it. And when you cling too tightly to what you think you know, you miss what's actually here. The professor couldn't learn until he emptied his cup. Hakuin couldn't be disturbed by false accusations because he didn't cling to any story about what was happening. The monk had to let go of his need for an answer he could grasp. And you can do the same. You can empty your cup. You can practice. Is that so? You can let go of needing to know everything right now. This is the wisdom of not knowing in Zen Buddhism. Not ignorance, not confusion, but the humble recognition that reality is mysterious, that life is uncertain, and that you can be okay not having all the answers. You can take the next step. You can make the next choice. You can live fully without knowing how it all turns out. Because the truth is, you never knew how it would all turn out. You were just pretending you did. And that pretending created anxiety. Now you can set that down. You can rest in not knowing. You can approach each moment with beginner's mind, fresh and open and curious. And in that openness, real wisdom can arise. Not the wisdom of concepts and certainty, but the wisdom of direct seeing, of meeting reality as it is, of being present without needing to have it all figured out. This is freedom. This is peace. This is the gift of don't know mind. Is that so? The master asks, and in those 3 words is an invitation to stop clinging, to stop demanding certainty, to rest in the mystery of not knowing, and to discover that you're okay there, that you've always been okay, that you don't need all the answers to take the next breath, to take the next step, to be fully alive in this moment. Just this, just now, just not knowing and being okay with it. This is where peace lives. Everything has its season, its time of arrival, its time of purpose, its time of completion, and its time of departure. This is one of the most fundamental truths in Zen Buddhism. Nothing stays. Nothing remains in the same form forever. Everything that comes into being will eventually change, transform, and pass away. The word for this in Buddhist teaching is anicca, impermanence. And it's not a sad teaching, though it might sound that way at first. It's actually a teaching about freedom. Because when you truly understand that nothing lasts, you stop trying to make things permanent. You stop exhausting yourself trying to freeze moments in time. You stop clinging to what wants to move. And in that release, you discover a kind of peace that was impossible when you were gripping so tight. Think about autumn. The leaves change color. They fall from the trees. The branches become bare. Is this tragic? Is the tree grieving each leaf that drops? No. The tree releases the leaves because that's what trees do. That's how they survive winter. That's how they make space for new growth in spring. The falling isn't failure. It's part of the cycle. It's necessary. It's natural. And you're like that too. You have seasons. Things come into your life, serve their purpose, complete, and then leave. Relationships, jobs, homes, versions of yourself. They're not meant to last forever. They're meant to be present for their season and then move on. But we fight this. We want everything good to stay forever. We want to hold on to moments that are already passing. We want people to remain exactly as they are. We want circumstances to never change. And this wanting creates suffering. Not the changes themselves, but our refusal to accept that change is how life works. Let me tell you a story about a Zen master and his most precious possession. There was a teacher who lived very simply. He owned almost nothing. Just his robes, his bowl, and one other thing. A teacup. This wasn't an ordinary teacup. It was old, made by a famous craftsman centuries ago. It was beautiful. Simple in design, but perfect in its proportions. The glaze caught the light in subtle ways. It fit perfectly in the hand. The master loved this cup. Every morning, he drank his tea from it. He washed it carefully. He handled it with attention and care. His students noticed how gently he held it, how his face softened when he used it. One day, a student was visiting the master's room. He saw the cup and recognized its value. He knew it must be precious, probably irreplaceable. "Master," the student said, "you clearly love this cup. You must worry about it. What will you do when it breaks?" The master picked up the cup. He held it in both hands, looking at it with obvious affection. Then he looked at the student and smiled. "It's already broken," he said. The student was confused. He looked at the cup. It was whole, intact. No cracks, no chips. "I don't understand, Master. The cup is perfect. It's not broken." "It will break," the master said gently. "All things do. Clay returns to earth. Nothing made lasts forever. This cup, this body, this life, all of it is temporary. So rather than pretend it will last forever and then suffer when it breaks, I acknowledge its nature now." He held the cup up to the light. "It's already broken. It's already returning to what it came from. And because I see this clearly, I can truly appreciate it while it's here. I don't spend my energy worrying about when it will break. I don't create suffering by wishing it could last forever. I simply enjoy it now, knowing it won't last. And that makes each moment with it more precious, not less." The student sat with this teaching. The master set the cup down carefully and poured tea into it. The cup was still whole, still beautiful, still perfectly functional. But the master held it with the understanding that it was already in the process of becoming something else. This is the wisdom of impermanence in Zen Buddhism. When you understand that everything is temporary, you stop relating to things as if they're permanent. You stop creating suffering by demanding they stay forever. The cup is already broken. Your body is already aging. Your relationships are already changing. Your life is already moving toward its end. Everything is already in the process of transformation. This isn't pessimism. This is clear seeing. And clear seeing brings freedom. Because when you know something won't last, you appreciate it differently. Each morning with that cup becomes precious. Each moment with the people you love becomes significant. Each breath becomes remarkable because you recognize it won't go on forever. Impermanence makes things valuable. Not less valuable. More valuable. Because they're here now and they won't always be. Think about a sunset. Why is it beautiful? Partly because it doesn't last. It's there for a brief window of time and then it's gone. If the sky stayed that color forever, you'd stop noticing it. The temporary nature is part of what makes it precious. Your life is like that. Everything in it is like that. Here for a season. Precious because it's temporary. Meaningful because it won't last. And when you understand this, really understand it, something shifts in how you hold things. You hold them more gently, more appreciatively, with open hands instead of clenched fists. The master with his teacup wasn't being careless. He still handled it carefully. He still appreciated its beauty. But he wasn't tormented by the future moment when it would break. He was free to enjoy it now. This is what Zen Buddhism teaches about letting go. It's not about not caring. It's not about becoming cold or detached. It's about loving things fully while recognizing their temporary nature. It's about holding with open hands. There's a natural rhythm to everything. Things arise. They exist for a time. They serve their purpose. And then they complete. They move on. They make space for what comes next. Watch the seasons change. Spring doesn't cling to its flowers. Summer doesn't try to prevent autumn. Autumn doesn't resist winter. Each season completes itself and gives way to the next. And this is what allows life to continue. If spring tried to hold on to every flower, if trees refused to let their leaves fall, everything would become stuck. Stagnant. Unable to renew itself. You need this too. You need things to complete. You need old forms to fall away so new ones can emerge. You need endings to make space for beginnings. But so often, we interpret endings as failure, as rejection, as something going wrong. We think if we were good enough, smart enough, lovable enough, things wouldn't end. Things would stay. But that's not how life works. Even the most beautiful things end. Not because they failed, but because their season completed. Let me tell you another story. This one takes place in autumn. A young monk was walking through the monastery garden with his teacher. It was late in the season. The trees were losing their leaves. The ground was covered in gold and red and brown. The young monk looked sad. "It's dying," he said, gesturing to the trees. "Everything is dying. It makes me feel empty." The teacher stopped walking. He picked up a leaf that had just fallen. It was still bright red, still beautiful. He held it up. "Is this dying?" he asked. "Yes," the monk said. "It fell from the tree. It will decay. It will return to earth. It's dying." "And is that sad?" The young monk thought about this. "I suppose it is." The leaf was alive on the tree. Green in spring. Now it's dead. The teacher smiled. "The leaf isn't dying. It's completing. It did what leaves do. It grew in spring. It helped the tree all summer, making food from sunlight. It changed color in autumn, showing beauty before letting go. And now it falls. It returns to the earth where it will feed the soil. Next spring, that soil will nourish new leaves. The leaf isn't dying. It's participating in life, doing what leaves do. He let the leaf fall from his hand. It drifted down to join the others on the ground. If the leaf tried to hold on, the teacher continued, if it refused to fall, it would become dry and brittle on the branch. It would block light from new growth. It would prevent the tree from resting in winter. The letting go isn't death. It's part of life. It's necessary. It's what allows renewal. The monk watched the leaves falling, but now he saw them differently. They weren't dying. They were completing their purpose. They were participating in something larger than their individual existence. They were making space for what comes next. Everything has its season, the teacher said. People, relationships, jobs, versions of yourself. They come. They serve their purpose. They complete. And if you hold them lightly, if you let them complete when their season is done, you're not losing them. You're honoring the natural rhythm of life. You're making space for renewal. The young monk stood there as more leaves fell around them. The garden wasn't dying. It was resting, preparing, composting the old to feed the new. This teaching goes deep when you let it, because you've probably been taught the opposite. You've been taught that endings are failures, that if something ends, someone must be at fault. That letting go means you didn't care enough. But Zen shows you differently. Endings aren't failures. They're completions. And letting go isn't abandonment. It's wisdom. It's recognizing when something has served its purpose and releasing it with gratitude rather than clinging to it with desperation. Think about the relationships in your life that have ended. Maybe some of them were painful. Maybe you felt rejected or hurt. But can you see, looking back, that maybe they had completed? That what you were learning from each other had been learned? That holding on longer would have created more suffering, not less. This doesn't mean the relationship didn't matter. It means it mattered for its season. And when that season ended, holding on became painful for both of you. Or think about versions of yourself that you're still clinging to. Who you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. The person you were before something changed you. You might be grieving that version of yourself, wishing you could go back, trying to hold on to who you were. But that version of you completed its season. It served its purpose. It brought you to where you are now. And if you keep trying to be that person, you're like a leaf refusing to fall. You're preventing your own renewal. You're blocking the light from new growth. Everything that enters your life comes for a reason. To teach you something. To help you grow in some way. To be part of your journey for a time. And when that purpose is complete, the form changes. The relationship ends. The job ends. The version of you ends. Not because it failed, because it succeeded. It did what it came to do. Let me share one more story. This one is about a student who learned this lesson in an unexpected way. There was a monk who had a profound experience during meditation. He saw clearly, for just a moment, the nature of reality. Everything fell into place. He felt complete peace, complete understanding. It was the most significant moment of his life. Afterward, he was overjoyed. He had done it. He had achieved what he'd been seeking. He had reached enlightenment. He went to his master, bowing low. "Master," he said, "I've had a breakthrough. I understand now. I felt it completely. I want to stay in that state forever." The master looked at him with kind eyes. "And where is that state now?" The student paused. "It's gone, but I experienced it. I know I can get back to it. I just need to recreate the conditions. I'll meditate longer. I'll try harder. I'll get back to that place." The master picked up a cup of water. He held it up. "If I pour this water into your cupped hands," he said, "can you hold it?" For a moment, the student said, "And if you try to hold it tighter to keep it from escaping, what happens?" The student understood. "It leaks out faster." "Your enlightenment experience," the master said gently, "is like water. It came. You received it. It was real. But now it's gone. And if you spend your life trying to recreate it, trying to hold on to it, trying to get back to it, you'll miss what's here now. You'll miss the teaching of this moment because you're grasping at the teaching of that moment." "But it was so clear," the student said. "So peaceful. I want that clarity, that peace." "The clarity came," the master said, "because in that moment you let go of wanting anything. You were simply present. But now you're grasping again. You're clinging to the memory of letting go. And clinging to anything, even to a moment of freedom, creates suffering." The master set down the cup. The experience served its purpose. It showed you what's possible. It opened something in you. But now it's complete. Let it go. Don't try to hold water in your fist. Receive each moment freshly. Let each experience arise, serve its purpose, and pass. This is the practice. Not holding on to peak experiences, but being fully present with whatever is here now. The student sat with this teaching. He'd been so focused on getting back to that one perfect moment that he'd been miserable every moment since, comparing everything to it, finding everything lacking, creating suffering by trying to hold on to something that was meant to pass. He realized he needed to let go even of his enlightenment, even of that perfect moment. It had served its purpose. It had shown him something real. But now it was complete. And holding on to it was preventing him from being present with what was actually here. This is one of the most subtle teachings in Zen Buddhism. Even the good things need to be released. Even the beautiful moments. Even the experiences of clarity and peace. Because trying to hold on to them turns them into suffering. Everything is meant to flow through you. Experiences come. They're real. They matter. They teach you something. And then they go. And if you let them go, if you don't try to freeze them in place or recreate them endlessly, you remain open to what comes next. The teacup will break. The leaves will fall. The moment of clarity will pass. Your body will age. Your circumstances will change. Everything you love will eventually transform into something else. This is impermanence. This is anicca. This is the truth that sets you free when you stop fighting it. And here's what's beautiful. When you understand impermanence deeply, you don't love things less. You love them more. Because you know they won't always be here. You know this moment is unrepeatable. You know each thing is precious exactly because it's temporary. The master doesn't love his teacup less because he knows it will break. He loves it more. He appreciates it more fully. Each use is significant because he knows there will be a last time. You can live this way too. Each conversation with someone you love is precious when you remember they won't always be here. Each moment in this body is remarkable when you remember this body is changing. Each day is significant when you remember your days are numbered. Impermanence doesn't diminish life. It intensifies it. It wakes you up. It makes you present. It helps you notice what's here instead of taking it for granted. And when it's time for something to end, when a season completes, you can let it go with grace instead of desperation, with gratitude for what it was instead of bitterness that it's over, with open hands instead of clenched fists. The cup is already broken. The leaves will fall. The moment will pass. This is not tragedy. This is the way things work. This is life in its natural rhythm. And when you align yourself with this rhythm instead of fighting it, when you let things come and go in their own time, when you hold everything lightly enough to release it when its season ends, you discover something profound. You discover that letting go doesn't mean you lose things. It means you free them to be what they are. Temporary. Precious. Complete in themselves. Not needing to last forever to be meaningful. This is the art of release in Zen Buddhism. Not forcing yourself to stop caring, but understanding things so clearly that the grip naturally loosens. Seeing impermanence so directly that holding on no longer makes sense. The master with his teacup. The falling leaves in autumn. The student learning to release even enlightenment. These stories are showing you the same truth. Everything completes. Everything moves on. And when you stop fighting this, when you stop trying to make permanent what is by nature temporary, you find a peace that was impossible when you were grasping. Notice where you're holding on right now. What are you trying to make permanent? What ending are you refusing to accept? What are you gripping so tight because you're afraid of loss? And consider what might happen if you softened that grip. Just a little. If you held that person, that circumstance, that version of yourself with open hands instead of a closed fist. If you appreciated it as it is right now without demanding it, stay forever. The cup is already broken, but it's here now. It's beautiful now. It serves its purpose now. And that's enough. That's always been enough. This is what Zen Buddhism teaches about letting go. Not that you shouldn't love things, but that you can love them completely while knowing they won't last. You can hold them close while holding them lightly. You can appreciate their presence while accepting their eventual absence. This is freedom. This is wisdom. This is the art of release. And it's available to you right now, in this moment, with this breath, by softening your grip just a little, by recognizing that what you're holding is already in the process of changing, already on its journey from one form to another. You don't have to let go of everything at once. You just have to see impermanence clearly. And when you do, the letting go happens naturally. Not as loss, but as participation in the natural flow of life. the seasons change. The leaves fall. The cup will eventually break. And you, understanding this, can love it all more deeply, can be present with it more fully, can let it go more gracefully when the time comes. This is the teaching. This is the practice. This is the way. There's a profound simplicity in open hands. They can receive. They can give. They can hold something gently for a time and then release it without struggle. Closed fists, on the other hand, can only grip. They can't receive anything new because they're already full. They can't give because they're holding too tight. And when they finally open, often it's because exhaustion forced them, not because wisdom guided them. We've explored Wu Wei, the natural way of flowing instead of forcing. We've looked at the weight we carry and how to set it down. We've discovered the wisdom of not knowing, of beginner's mind. We've understood impermanence and the art of release. All of these teachings in Zen Buddhism point to the same truth. Life works better when you hold it with open hands, when you're present with what is instead of clinging to what was or grasping for what might be. This isn't a distant goal. This isn't something you achieve after years of meditation. This is available right now, in this moment, with this breath, because this moment is the only place you can actually live, the only place you have any real power, the only place where peace is actually possible. The past exists only in memory. Memory is important. It teaches you things. It shapes who you are. But the past isn't happening anymore. It's not where you live. And when you spend your present moment lost in the past, replaying old conversations, reliving old pain, you're choosing memory over reality. You're choosing what was over what is. The future exists only in imagination. Imagination is valuable. It helps you plan. It opens possibilities. But the future isn't real yet. It hasn't arrived. It may not arrive the way you imagine it. And when you spend your present moment lost in the future, worrying about what might happen, rehearsing scenarios that may never occur, you're choosing fantasy over reality. You're choosing what might be over what is. Only now is real. Only now is where you actually are. Only now is where life is happening. This is the core teaching of Zen Buddhism, not as philosophy to think about, but as direct experience to live. Right now, as you're hearing these words, you're breathing. Your heart is beating. You're alive in this moment. This is not rehearsal. This is not preparation for some future moment when life will really begin. This is it. This is life. Right here. Right now. And when you're fully present with it, when you're not half here and half lost in past or future, something remarkable happens. The heaviness lifts. The anxiety quiets. There's a sense of okayness that doesn't depend on circumstances being perfect. Because you're not arguing with reality anymore. You're just here with it. Let me tell you a story about presence. This one has been told many ways over the centuries, but the truth it points to never gets old. A woman was traveling through a forest. The path was narrow, winding between ancient trees. She was alone, and as the day grew late, she began to feel uneasy. The forest was growing dark. Strange sounds echoed between the trees. Then she heard something behind her. Something large, moving fast. She turned and saw a tiger emerging from the undergrowth. Its eyes were fixed on her. It began to run. She ran too. Her heart pounded. Her breath came in gasps. The tiger was faster. It was gaining on her. She could hear its breath, feel its presence right behind her. Ahead, the path ended at a cliff. She had nowhere to go. But at the edge of the cliff, she saw a vine growing down the rock face. Without thinking, she grabbed it and swung herself over the edge, holding tight to the vine. She looked down. Far below, at the bottom of the cliff, she saw another tiger. Its mouth was open, waiting. She looked up. The first tiger paced at the top of the cliff, reaching its paw toward her, trying to swipe at the vine. And then she noticed something else. 2 mice, one white and one black, had appeared from a crack in the cliff face. They were gnawing at the vine. Steady, persistent, they were chewing through the only thing keeping her from falling. Tiger above. Tiger below. The vine fraying with each bite of the mice. And there, growing from the cliff right beside her, she noticed a wild strawberry. It was perfectly ripe, red and glistening in the fading light. She reached out, plucked the strawberry, and ate it. How sweet it tasted. This story isn't about denying danger. The tigers are real. The vine is breaking. The situation is impossible. But in that impossible situation, there's still this moment. There's still this strawberry. There's still this taste, this sweetness, this immediate experience of being alive. The woman could have spent her last moments in terror, completely lost in the horror of her situation. And that would have been understandable. But instead, for one moment, she was fully present. She tasted the strawberry. She experienced its sweetness completely. This is what Zen Buddhism teaches about presence. Not waiting until everything is safe before you allow yourself to be here. Not requiring perfect circumstances before you can appreciate what's actually in front of you. But being willing to taste the strawberry even while the tigers wait and the vine frays. Because here's the truth. There are always tigers. There's always a vine fraying. Your body is aging. Your time is limited. Uncertainty surrounds you. Nothing is guaranteed. And if you wait for all that to change before you allow yourself to be present, you'll miss your entire life. But right now, in this moment, there's also always a strawberry. Something immediate. Something real. Something that can be experienced fully if you're actually here for it. The sweetness of that strawberry doesn't deny the reality of the tigers. But the tigers don't cancel the sweetness of the strawberry either. Both are true. And presence means being with what's actually here, not just with your thoughts about what's here. Think about your own life right now. What are your tigers? What are you afraid of? What uncertainty stalks you? What endings are approaching? And what's your strawberry? What's actually here right now that you might be missing because you're so focused on the tigers? What immediate experience is available to you in this moment if you're present enough to receive it? The breath moving in and out of your body. The sensation of being alive. The fact that in this exact moment, you're okay. You're here. You're breathing. This isn't denial. This isn't pretending the difficult things aren't real. This is presence. This is being with what is, instead of being lost in thoughts about what is. There's a difference. a huge difference. Your mind is almost always somewhere else, replaying yesterday, rehearsing tomorrow, analyzing, comparing, judging, planning, worrying. It's doing everything except being here. And this isn't wrong. The mind is doing what minds do. But you don't have to believe every thought. You don't have to follow the mind every time it wanders into past or future. You can notice when it's happened and gently bring yourself back to now. This is what the Zen masters call zazen. Just sitting, just being present, not trying to achieve anything, not trying to become anything. Just here, just this, just now. And you don't need a meditation cushion for this. You can do it right now. Feel your body where it is. Notice the sensation of breathing. Hear the sounds around you. See what's in front of you. This is presence. This is being here. Simple, direct, immediate. Let me share another story. This one about a monk who learned presence through the most ordinary action. In a monastery, there was a young monk who was eager to learn. He studied texts. He sat in meditation. He listened to Dharma talks. But he felt frustrated. He couldn't grasp what everyone was pointing to. He felt like he was missing something essential. One day, he was assigned to help clean the grounds. His job was to sweep the stone paths that wound through the monastery gardens. He found this frustrating too. He wanted to be meditating, studying, doing something spiritual. Sweeping felt like a waste of time. An old monk worked alongside him, also sweeping. The young monk swept quickly, impatiently, wanting to finish so he could get back to his real practice. But the old monk swept slowly, carefully, with complete attention to each stroke of the broom. The young monk watched him. The old monk's face was peaceful. His movements were smooth, rhythmic, unhurried. He seemed completely absorbed in the simple act of sweeping. Finally, the young monk couldn't contain his curiosity. "Elder," he said, "you sweep as if it's the most important thing in the world. But it's just cleaning. How can you give it such attention?" The old monk paused. He leaned on his broom and looked at the young monk with kind eyes. "When I sweep," he said, "I just sweep. My mind doesn't wander to what I'll do next or what I did before. I'm not thinking about meditation or enlightenment or anything else. I'm just here, sweeping this path, feeling the broom in my hands, seeing the leaves move, hearing the sound of the bristles on stone." He resumed sweeping, and his movements were like a meditation in themselves. "Each stroke is complete," he continued. "I'm not sweeping to finish. I'm not sweeping to get to something else. I'm sweeping because this is what's here to do. And when I'm fully present with it, there's a perfection in it. Not because I'm doing it perfectly, but because it's perfectly itself. Just sweeping. Just this." The young monk tried it. He slowed down. He paid attention to the broom in his hands. The weight of it, the texture of the handle, the sound it made on the stones, the visual pattern of the leaves gathering and moving. And something shifted. The resistance fell away. The impatience quieted. There was just this, just sweeping. And in that simple presence, he touched what he'd been seeking through all his complicated searching. This is what Zen masters mean when they say, "Chop wood, carry water." After enlightenment, You still chop wood and carry water, but now you're present with it. You're fully here. And in that presence, even the most ordinary actions become extraordinary. Not because they've changed, because you have. You've stopped treating the present moment as something to get through so you can reach the next moment. You've stopped living for some future state where you'll finally be allowed to rest. You're resting now, being now, living now. When you wash dishes, wash dishes. When you walk, walk. When you eat, eat. Not half here and half thinking about something else. Fully here, completely present with what is. This isn't complicated, but it's not easy either, because the mind has a lifetime of habit pulling it away from now, pulling it into memory, pulling it into imagination, pulling it into judgment and analysis and planning. Notice this. That's the first step. Just notice when the mind has wandered, when you're physically here but mentally somewhere else, when you're eating but not tasting, walking but not feeling, talking to someone but not really listening because you're planning what you'll say next. This noticing isn't judgment, it's awareness. And awareness is what makes choice possible. Once you notice you've wandered, you can return. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice your breath. Look at what's actually in front of you. Listen to the sounds that are actually here. This is returning. This is coming back to now. And you'll wander again. That's guaranteed. The practice isn't to never wander. The practice is to notice when you have and gently return. Again and again. Thousands of times a day if necessary. This is meditation. Not just sitting on a cushion, though that helps, but living with presence. Coming back to now over and over. There's a story about a famous calligrapher named Ikkyu. He was a Zen master in Japan, known for his insight and his unconventional ways. A wealthy student came to him seeking wisdom. The student wanted something profound to take home, something to hang on his wall, something that would remind him of the deepest truths. "Master Ikkyu," the student said, bowing low, "would you write something for me? Some words of ultimate wisdom that I can contemplate?" Ikkyu took out his brush and ink. He thought for a moment, then wrote on a large piece of paper. When he was done, he handed it to the student. The student looked at what was written. Just one word, repeated 3 times. Attention. 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 The student was disappointed. He'd hoped for something more profound, something more complex. This seemed too simple. "Is this all?" he asked. "Just attention?" Ikkyu smiled. "You asked for ultimate wisdom. That's it. Pay attention. That's the whole teaching. That's the entire path. Pay attention to this moment, to what you're doing, to what's here, to what's actually happening instead of what you're thinking about what's happening." The student looked at the paper again, 3 times. Attention. 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 "But what does attention mean?" he asked. "Attention means attention," Ikkyu said simply. "This teaching cuts through everything. All the complicated philosophy, all the elaborate practices, all the seeking and striving. It comes down to this. Pay attention. Be here. Notice what's actually happening. When you're truly paying attention, you're present. When you're present, you're not creating extra suffering through resistance or grasping. When you're not creating extra suffering, you're at peace. Not because your circumstances are perfect, but because you're here with them instead of fighting them. You're tasting the strawberry instead of being lost in fear of the tigers. Attention, attention, attention to your breath right now, to the sensation of being alive, to the person you're with, to the task at hand, to this moment exactly as it is. This is living with open hands in Zen Buddhism, not gripping the past, not grasping at the future, just here, just now, just this, receiving what comes, releasing what goes, present with what is, and in that presence you discover something. The peace you've been seeking isn't waiting for you in some future moment when everything aligns perfectly. It's here. It's always been here. You were just too busy looking elsewhere to notice it. The woman tastes the strawberry. The monk sweeps the path. Ikkyu writes attention 3 times. They're all pointing to the same truth. This moment is your life. Not preparation for life. Not a stepping stone to some better moment. This, now, this breath, this heartbeat, this sensation of being alive. And when you're truly here for it, when you're not halfway somewhere else, you find that this moment is enough. It always has been. You just kept missing it by looking for something else. So, notice where you are right now. Not where your mind is. Where you actually are. Feel your body. Notice your breathing. Look at what's in front of you. This is it. This is life. This is where peace lives. Not in perfect circumstances. Not in achieving every goal. Not in figuring everything out. Right here. Right now. In this ordinary, precious, unrepeatable moment. The tigers are there. The vine is fraying. Impermanence is real. Change is constant. Nothing lasts forever. And the strawberry is sweet. This breath is here. You're alive right now. This moment is real. Both are true. And presence means being with what's actually here, not lost in thoughts about it. This is the teaching. This is the practice. This is the way of Zen Buddhism. Open hands, open heart, open to this moment exactly as it is, not waiting for permission, not waiting for perfect conditions, not waiting for some future moment when you'll finally be ready. Just here, just now, just this. Attention, attention, attention. The strawberry is in front of you. Will you taste it? Will you be here for it? Or will you miss it, lost in thoughts about the tigers? This is your choice. Moment by moment, breath by breath. The teachings we've explored all lead here, to this moment, to this presence, to this willingness to be with what is, instead of fighting for what should be. Wu Wei, the natural way, flows through presence. You can't force the present moment. You can only be with it. The weight you carry falls away when you're truly here, because that weight exists in time, in memory, imagination, but not in now. The wisdom of not knowing rests here. In this moment, you don't need to know everything. You just need to be present with what is. The art of release happens here. You can only let go in this moment. Not yesterday. Not tomorrow. Now. And living with open hands means living in the present. Receiving this moment. Releasing the last moment. Not clinging to either. This is where everything we've explored comes together. In the simple, profound practice of being here. Not perfectly. Not forever. Just for this one breath. And then the next. And then the next. The monastery bells ring. The path waits to be swept. The strawberry grows on the cliff. The tea needs to be made. The dishes need to be washed. And you're here to do it. Fully. Completely. With attention. Not because these tasks will lead you to enlightenment, but because these tasks are your life. And when you're fully present with them, you discover that life isn't somewhere else waiting for you to arrive. It's here. It's always been here. You just needed to stop looking elsewhere long enough to notice. Attention. 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 This is the teaching. This is everything. And it's available right now. In this moment. With this breath. There's a particular kind of suffering that doesn't come from what's happening around you. It comes from within. A restlessness. An agitation. A sense that you should be somewhere else, doing something else, being someone else. It lives in your chest as a low hum of anxiety. It shows up in your thoughts as endless questions with no answers. It manifests in your body as an inability to settle, to rest, to simply be still. In Zen Buddhism, they have a word for this. Dukkha. Often translated as suffering, but more accurately understood as a deep unsatisfactoriness. A persistent sense that something isn't quite right. And here's what the teaching wants you to understand. This restlessness isn't evidence that something is wrong with you. It's not a personal failing. It's the mind doing what unobserved minds do. Creating urgency where none exists. Spinning stories about danger that isn't present. Treating the natural unfolding of life as if it were a threat. Your mind is ancient. It evolved to keep you safe by constantly scanning for danger. In a world where survival meant outrunning predators, this was useful. The anxious humans survived. The relaxed ones became lunch. But now, that same mechanism takes the peaceful moments of your life and fills them with alarm. It takes natural pauses and labels them as wrong. It takes stillness and interprets it as danger. The mind whispers, if nothing is happening, something must be wrong. But that's not truth. That's an alarm system that doesn't know the difference between actual danger and the quiet groundwork that precedes every meaningful change. Think about the last time you felt truly at peace. Not just the absence of problems, but genuine peace. Probably it wasn't because everything in your life was perfect. It wasn't because you'd achieved every goal or resolved every uncertainty. It was probably a moment when you stopped checking, when you stopped measuring yourself against some invisible standard, when you were simply here, breathing, present, not needing anything to be different than it was. That peace is always available, but the restless mind keeps you from it. It keeps you spinning, planning, worrying, comparing. Always somewhere else. Never here. Let me tell you a story about a monk who struggled with this. There was a young monk who came to a monastery seeking peace. He'd heard that meditation could quiet the mind, that enlightenment could end suffering. He was eager to begin, but when he sat to meditate, his mind was chaos. Thoughts raced. His body fidgeted. He couldn't sit still for even a few minutes without feeling like he needed to be doing something else. Anything else? He went to his teacher, frustrated. "Master," he said, "I came here to find peace. But my mind is more restless than ever. I sit to meditate and all I feel is agitation. Am I doing something wrong?" The teacher listened carefully. Then he said, "Come with me." They walked to a small pond behind the monastery. The surface of the water was agitated. Wind blew across it, creating ripples and waves. You couldn't see through to the bottom. The reflection of the sky was broken, distorted. "What do you see?" the teacher asked. "Disturbed water," the monk said. "Restless, like my mind." "And what is disturbing the water?" "The wind." The teacher nodded. They stood there in silence, watching the pond. The wind continued for a while, but gradually it began to calm. The ripples grew smaller. The waves settled. And as the surface calmed, the monk could begin to see through it. He could see the rocks at the bottom, the plants growing there, the fish moving slowly through the depths. And the sky's reflection became clear, undistorted. The water was never the problem, the teacher said. The water is naturally clear. But when wind disturbs it, you can't see its true nature. You only see disturbance. He turned to the monk. "Your mind is like this water. Its nature is clear. But thoughts are like wind. They create disturbance. They make it seem like the mind itself is the problem. But the mind isn't the problem. The disturbance is temporary. And like the wind, it will pass if you don't keep creating more." "How do I stop creating more?" the monk asked. "You don't fight the wind," the teacher said. "You don't try to force the water to be still. You just stop adding to the disturbance. You sit. You notice the thoughts are there. But you don't follow everyone. You don't believe every story. You just watch the wind blow across the surface and trust that it will settle." The monk sat with this teaching. He returned to meditation, but with different understanding. His thoughts still came. The restlessness still arose, but he stopped treating it as evidence of failure. He stopped fighting it. He just watched it like watching wind on water and allowed it to settle in its own time. This is one of the most liberating teachings in Zen Buddhism. The restlessness isn't the problem. Your relationship to the restlessness is the problem. When restlessness arises and you think, "This shouldn't be happening. I should be calm by now. Everyone else can meditate. Why can't I?" You're adding wind to the water. You're creating more disturbance on top of the existing disturbance. But when restlessness arises and you simply notice, restlessness is here, without judgment, without making it mean something about you, it's just weather. It's just wind. And wind passes. The nature of mind is clear, like water. But thoughts and emotions move through it constantly. That's normal. That's That's not a problem to solve. That's just how minds work. The practice isn't to stop thoughts. The practice is to stop believing you need to stop thoughts. To stop treating the mind's natural movement as evidence that something is wrong. Think about the sky. Clouds pass through constantly. Sometimes thick, dark clouds. Sometimes light, wispy ones. But the sky doesn't identify with the clouds. It doesn't say, "I am cloudy," and panic about it. Clouds come. Clouds go. The sky remains, spacious and open, allowing it all. You are like the sky. Your thoughts and emotions are like clouds. They pass through. They're real while they're there. But they're not you. And they don't stay unless you hold them in place. When restlessness arises, notice it. Here's restlessness. That's all. You don't need to figure out why. You don't need to make it go away. You don't need to judge yourself for feeling it. Just notice it's there, like noticing a cloud passing through the sky. And here's what's remarkable. When you stop fighting restlessness, when you stop treating it as the enemy, it often settles on its own. Not because you forced it to, but because you stopped feeding it with resistance. Let me share another story. This one about a teacher and a question that changed everything. A student came to her teacher with a familiar complaint. "Master," she said, "my mind never stops. Even when I try to meditate, thoughts come one after another. Plans, worries, memories, fantasies. It never ends. How can I make it stop?" The teacher was quiet for a moment. Then she asked a simple question. "When you breathe, do you make your breath happen? Or does breathing happen on its own?" The student thought about this. "It happens on its own. I don't have to think about it. And yet, you can also control your breath if you choose to. You can breathe faster or slower, deeper or shallower. Yes? Yes. So breathing is both automatic and controllable, both effortless and something you can influence." The student nodded, unsure where this was going. "Your mind is the same," the teacher said. "Thoughts arise automatically. You don't make them happen. They just appear, like breath appears. But you can also influence them. You can choose which thoughts to follow and which to let pass. The mistake you're making," the teacher continued, "is trying to control something that's meant to be automatic. You're trying to stop thoughts from arising. But that's like trying to stop breathing. Thoughts will arise as long as you're alive. That's what minds do." "So what do I do?" the student asked. "Stop trying to control what arises," the teacher said. "Just notice what arises. A thought appears. You notice it. You don't follow it into its story. You just see, there's a thought about tomorrow. And then you return to your breath. Another thought appears. There's a memory. And you return to your breath. You're not trying to stop the thoughts. You're just choosing not to follow everyone. Like standing by a river, watching leaves float by. You don't have to grab every leaf. You just watch them pass." The student tried this. Thoughts still came. But she stopped treating their arrival as failure. She stopped believing she needed to grab each one. She just watched them float by. And gradually, space opened up between thoughts. moments of quiet, moments of rest, not because she'd mastered her mind, but because she'd stopped fighting it. This teaching changes everything when you really understand it. The goal isn't to have no thoughts. The goal isn't to achieve some permanent state of calm where nothing disturbs you. That's not possible. That's not even desirable. The goal is to have a different relationship with your thoughts and emotions, to stop identifying with every passing cloud, to recognize that you are the sky, spacious and vast, and all this weather moves through you without defining you. When anxiety arises, you don't have to become an anxious person. It's just anxiety passing through. When restlessness arises, you don't have to let it drive your actions. It's just restlessness passing through. When thoughts race, you don't have to race with them. They're just thoughts, doing what thoughts do. This is the freedom Zen Buddhism offers. Not freedom from thoughts and emotions. Freedom from being enslaved by them. Freedom to notice them without being controlled by them. But there's something else happening with restlessness. Something deeper than just the mind's natural movement. Often, restlessness is covering something else. Something you don't want to feel, something you're trying to outrun. Stillness can be uncomfortable, because in stillness, what you've been avoiding catches up with you. The grief you haven't processed, the fear you haven't acknowledged, the pain you've been too busy to feel. So the mind creates restlessness. It keeps you moving, planning, doing, thinking. Anything to avoid stopping. Anything to avoid the stillness where uncomfortable things might surface. The sky is never disturbed by clouds. The water's nature is always clear, even when wind creates ripples. And your true nature is always at peace, even when thoughts and emotions move through. This is what Zen Buddhism invites you to discover. Not by achieving some special state, but by seeing clearly what's already true. You are not the restlessness. You are the space in which restlessness appears. And when you rest in that understanding, the restlessness may still come and go. But it no longer defines you. It no longer controls you. It's just weather, passing through, while you remain, like the sky, spacious and still and free. There's a kind of pain that every human being will experience. The pain of loss, of saying goodbye to someone or something you love, of watching what matters slip away despite everything you do to hold on. This pain is universal. It crosses all boundaries. It doesn't care about your wisdom or your preparation. It arrives when it arrives, and it changes you. In Zen Buddhism, there's a recognition that loss is not optional. If you love, you will lose. If you attach yourself to anything in this impermanent world, you will eventually have to let it go. This isn't pessimism. This is just seeing clearly how things work. But here's what makes Zen different from despair. The teaching doesn't ask you to stop loving to avoid loss. It asks you to love fully while understanding that loss is part of the deal. To open your heart completely while knowing it will break. To attach yourself to people and places and experiences while recognizing their temporary nature. This takes a kind of courage that most people don't realize they have until they need it. The pain of loss is real. Zen Buddhism doesn't minimize it, doesn't try to explain it away with philosophy. The grief is legitimate. The heartbreak is genuine. When something precious ends, when someone beloved dies, the pain is not a mistake. It's the price of having loved. But there's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is what happens when you lose something. It's natural. It's clean. It moves through you like a wave. Suffering is what happens when you refuse the pain. When you fight it. When you make it mean something about you or demand that it shouldn't be happening. Suffering is pain plus resistance. The Zen teaching is simple but profound. Feel the pain. Let it move through you. But don't add suffering on top of it by insisting reality should be different than it is. Let me share a story about a teacher and a student exploring grief. A student's father had died. She came to her teacher, weeping. "Master," she said, "the pain is unbearable. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I can't stop crying. When will this end?" The teacher sat with her in silence for a moment. Then she said, "Come walk with me." They walked to the monastery garden where a large stone fountain stood. Water flowed from the top, cascading down into a pool below. "Put your hand in the water," the teacher said. The student did. The water was cool, flowing constantly over her fingers. "Can you hold the water?" the teacher asked. "No," the student said. "It flows through my fingers." "Can you stop the water from flowing?" "No." "This is grief," the teacher said gently. "It's like water. It flows. You cannot hold it in place. You cannot stop it from moving. If you try to dam it up, to hold it back, it becomes stagnant. It becomes toxic. But if you let it flow through you, if you let it move, it will eventually find its own course." "But it hurts," the student said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," the teacher said. "Of course it hurts. You loved deeply. Grief is the price of that love. And it's a price worth paying. Because the alternative is to never love. To close your heart to protect yourself from pain. But that's not living. That's already being dead." She placed her hand over the student's heart. "Let the grief move. Don't fight it. Don't try to hold it. Don't make it wrong. Just let it flow through you like water through your fingers. It will change. It won't stay this acute forever. But it needs to move. And the only way to let it move is to feel it." The student stood there, her hand in the flowing water, understanding something she hadn't before. She didn't need to fix the grief. She didn't need to make it go away. She just needed to let it be what it was, a natural response to loss, a testament to love. This teaching is profound in its simplicity. Grief is not a problem to solve. It's an experience to move through, and the only way through is to stop fighting it. When you lose someone, there's often pressure to move on, to get over it, to return to normal. But grief doesn't work that way. You don't get over it. You integrate it. It becomes part of who you are. The person you were before the loss no longer exists. Loss changes you. And trying to return to who you were before is like trying to put water back in the fountain after it's flowed away. It can't be done. Instead, you become someone new. Someone who has known this loss. Someone who carries this grief. And that's not wrong. That's transformation. Painful transformation, but transformation nonetheless. In Zen Buddhism, they speak of karuna, compassion, not just for others, but for yourself, for the pain you're in, for the grief you're carrying, for the human experience of loss that you cannot avoid if you dare to love. Compassion means being with your pain without judging it, without thinking you should be stronger or more healed by now, without comparing your grief to anyone else's, just acknowledging, this is what I'm feeling. This is what it means to be human and to lose. There's a practice in Zen called metta, loving kindness. It's often directed toward others, but it begins with yourself, especially when you're in pain. May I be at peace. May I be free from suffering. May I hold this grief with gentleness, not as a prayer to make the grief disappear, but as a way of being kind to yourself while the grief moves through you. A way of not adding judgment and resistance on top of the pain that's already there. When you're grieving, you might notice a tendency to push the pain away, to distract yourself, to stay busy, to numb it with anything available. And sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes you need breaks from the intensity, but eventually the grief needs to be felt. And when you allow it, when you create space for it, something remarkable happens. The grief doesn't destroy you. It moves through you. And in moving through, it transforms from acute agony into something more like a tender ache. A scar that remains, but doesn't bleed anymore. Let me tell you one final story. This one about what remains after loss. A monk lost his dearest friend. They had practiced together for years, studied together, sat in meditation side by side, and then his friend died suddenly. The monk was devastated. He couldn't understand why the grief was so intense. He'd studied impermanence. He knew intellectually that everyone dies. But knowing it and living it were entirely different. He went to his teacher. "I feel broken," he said. "I thought understanding impermanence would protect me from this pain. But it doesn't. I'm just as devastated as anyone would be." The teacher looked at him with deep understanding. "Of course you are," he said. "You loved him. Real love doesn't protect you from grief. It guarantees it." "But what do I do with this?" the monk asked. "How do I carry this?" The teacher was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You don't carry it. You let it become part of you. The grief will change. The sharp edges will soften. But the love doesn't go away. Love doesn't die when the person dies. It remains. It becomes part of who you are, part of your depth, part of your capacity to understand others who grieve." "Your friend is gone," the teacher continued. "But what he gave you remains. The lessons, the laughter, the moments of connection, the ways he changed you. All of that is still here. Grief is just love with nowhere to go. So let it go inward. Let it deepen you. Let it open your heart even more, not close it." The monk sat with this teaching. Over time, he found it to be true. The grief didn't disappear, but it changed form. It became tenderness. It became depth. It became a capacity to sit with others in their pain without needing to fix it, because he knew that some pain can't be fixed. It can only be felt and integrated. His friend's death had taken something from him, but it had also given something: a deeper understanding of love and loss, a greater compassion for the human condition, a willingness to remain open-hearted even knowing that opening your heart means it will eventually break. This is what Zen Buddhism teaches about loss. It's not optional. It's not punishment. It's not evidence of failure. It's the natural result of loving in an impermanent world. And the wisdom isn't in avoiding loss. It's in how you hold the loss when it comes. Do you let it break you open or make you closed? Do you let it deepen you or embitter you? Do you let the grief move through you, or do you build walls to keep it in? The choice isn't whether to feel pain. Pain is inevitable. The choice is whether to add suffering on top of the pain by resisting it, judging it, or insisting it shouldn't be happening. The student with her hand in the water learned this. Grief flows. You can't hold it. You can't stop it. You can only let it move through you. The monk who lost his friend learned this. Love doesn't die. It just changes form. And grief is love's way of honoring what was lost. You'll face loss in your life. You already have. You'll face more. This isn't meant to frighten you. It's meant to prepare you. To help you understand that when loss comes, your grief is not wrong. Your pain is not weakness. Your heartbreak is not failure. It's the cost of love, the price of attachment, the inevitable result of opening your heart to an impermanent world. And it's worth it. Even knowing you'll lose everything eventually, love is worth it. Connection is worth it. Caring deeply is worth it. Because the alternative, closing your heart to avoid pain, that's not protection. That's choosing to be numb instead of alive. Zen Buddhism invites you to love fully while knowing you'll lose, to attach completely while understanding impermanence, to open your heart even though it will break. And when the breaking comes, to feel it, to let the grief move, to hold yourself with compassion, to recognize that you're not alone in this pain, that every human being who has ever loved has walked this path. Your grief is your humanity. Your pain is your proof that you dared to love. And both are sacred, even when they hurt. And so, we've traveled together through these ancient teachings about letting go and trusting the way things unfold. You don't need to remember every word or every lesson. What's meant to stay with you will stay. What needs to fall away will fall away. Even that is part of letting go. The wisdom we've explored isn't complicated. Life becomes lighter when we stop gripping so tightly. Peace comes when we allow things to be as they are. Uncertainty isn't something to conquer, it's something to make friends with. These truths are simple, but they change everything when we really see them. Perhaps you're beginning to notice where you've been holding on too hard. Perhaps you're starting to see that control was never really possible anyway. Perhaps you're feeling what it might be like to trust the unfolding, to let the river carry you instead of swimming against the current. These small shifts in understanding are everything. You don't have to force anything. You don't have to become someone new. The wisdom is already there, like water finding its way downhill. When you stop pushing, when you stop demanding certainty, when you release your grip just a little, life has room to flow. Whatever brought you here tonight, whatever weight you've been carrying, know that it's okay to set it down. not because you failed, but because you understand now. Holding on creates suffering. Letting go creates space. Trust replaces fear with something softer, something truer. Take one more breath with me. In and out. Feel how simple it is to just be here, in this moment, open and soft. May you rest in the gentle wisdom of release. May you trust the way things unfold. May you know the peace that comes from open hands. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.